Hey, what's going on? It's David Duford here at the Ford Insurance Group. I'm sitting across the table from Jane. Jane's an agent with the Ford Insurance Group and agreed to come on and kind of give us a little insight to a day in her life selling final expense insurance. So, Jane, how you doing today?
Hey, I'm well. Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So, I like doing these little intro or interviews just because I think the more perspective new agents have and kind of seeing different people doing what we teach and the same kind of blueprint is helpful to kind of motivate and keep people in focus. So I really appreciate you do this. So let's start with the from the top. Tell us a little
Okay.
bit about yourself and what drew you into insurance sales.
All right. Well, I am retired from teaching, and I was looking for something where I could earn some income, have a routine, have a schedule, get out and work with people and help people and make some money. Originally from Missouri. My husband and I are empty nesters. A year ago, we sold our family home in Southeast Missouri, and we're now in a motorhome, a Class A.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So we've been up in Michigan since the end of July, and we're in St. Louis now. Just arrived last night and
Wow.
heading south. Be here for the holidays with our family, and then head
Sure.
south. Yeah.
Okay. Should get you to talk to Stephen Burgess. His dream is to live in an RV.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, yeah. So he's probably like, oh, let me talk to him more. Okay. So okay, interesting. RVing around, not any kind of like nailed down to one place.
Not at all.
Well, how are you selling insurance considering kind of your mobility?
Oh, sure. I've found that face to face has been a little more successful, and I want to do everything I can to achieve success in this business. So, because of our mobility and the capacity to travel, I have just really focused on the face to face element of meeting people.
So I'm curious. I would figure that most people listening to this would think, huh, you're mobile, you're driving around, you could be anywhere in the United States, right? But you're
Yep.
choosing to do face to face. Can you explain to the audience why you've made that conscious decision to sell in person than over the phone?
I think that it's an easier transition, meeting people face to face. You can build a rapport a little more quickly, a little more easily. And I think people are more comfortable with that. And uh, I'd rather have the fastest route
Right.
to achieving success than not.
And I can't quite remember. Did you start off doing telesales and then transition to face, or did you jump in
You
kind
know,
of with the face to
I,
face?
I've tried both. I've tried the hybrid method, and I still have some leads that are in other states that I'll contact. In fact, I have one this morning up in Michigan. I've got a couple down in Florida that I've already built a rapport. But as far as just calling leads and doing the telesale 100%,
Mm-hmm.
I may transition to that after I get experience under my belt. But for the time being, I think that face to face is the easier route.
Right. I'll tell you this for those of you who are looking to get into insurance sales and just watching this interview with Jane. My personal opinion is you can have success. There's success to be had in either telesales or face to face. But if I were a gambling man and I was just choosing blind, the odds are higher that an agent's going to be more successful face to face than telesales. And the reason why is because with telesales, you lose out on the in-person, first-person experience and natural rapport building and trust building that we get. And you have to manufacture that over the phone more purposefully and intentfully, because all you have to work with is just your voice and
Yeah.
your tonality and pacing. Whereas if you're in person, you can read a person and they can read you better, you can read them better, and you have body language at your disposal. And my experience in training agents, probably since 2020 at this point, is that most people have the natural disposition to build trust in person much more accessibly than over the phone. That's a skill that some people have, and some people, or you really, really have to work at. So, Jane's got a point. I think face-to-face generally is a simpler process to get started with.
Yeah, I'll share a story. In one of my lead purchases, I was mistakenly given a lead that was 3.5 hours from my location. Of course, it was replaced, but I called the lead, and she was very receptive to the conversation, but her tolerance for the phone call was low.
Right.
And so I said, well, why don't we schedule a face-to-face? Nope, I don't want anybody at my home. Forget it. And she hung up on me. And I could not get her out of my mind. So we were in Holland, Michigan, which is on the western part of the state. She was in Detroit, which was on the eastern part of the state. And so I made a route on Thursday of last week where I was able to hit several face-to-face door knocks on the way. But when I arrived her house, her daughter was walking out the door, and I asked to speak with her mother. She said, well, she's not interested. I said, listen, I've driven 3.5 hours to speak with her. So she came out to her front porch, and we had a great conversation. Ultimately, she didn't like the price. A grandson was there. He said, I'll pay for it, Grandma. And that's as far as we've gotten. So she's thinking about it. But nonetheless, I'll call her back this week. And I gave it my best shot. But my
Sure.
point is, on the phone, she cut the conversation to the quick.
Right.
In person, she sat out there on her porch for an hour and a half and talked to me.
Right. Yeah, that is the glaring difference. And we see this all the way down to the conversion ratios, right? Like a telesales agent with Facebook leads, for example, a good one will close 5% of their Facebook leads, whereas for face-to-face, a good agent will close 10 to 15%. So a doubling to tripling of the close rates. And that's all because, all else equal, it's you're in front of that person, and there's more likelihood of trust.
Yes.
So it's just the nature of the business. Speaking of which, with you driving around and being anywhere, how do you manage leads? Like, can you give us some basic details, kind of like what type of leads you're buying and kind of how they would work for your circumstances?
Sure. My most recent purchases have been through Happy Agent leads, Facebook, local, and usually they're within typically no more than a 50-mile range. There's a couple other lead vendors that I want to try. But honestly, Happy Agent has been very effective for me. So I change locations and I make a new lead purchase.
Right. So Facebook leads give you the flexibility, right? Depending on no matter where you're at, you can just go there, point, click, order leads, and you got them, basically,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
That makes sense to me because you're doing direct mail would be great, but the problem with direct mail, right, is that 3 to 4 week lead time. You don't get all the leads up front. It takes weeks to get them back after the first 4 weeks. Mm-hmm. So if you're moving around, not a good choice. Yeah. So why don't you take us back? Think about the last couple of weeks, your best week in the field. Can you kind of take us through kind of like how that week looked in terms of calling on prospects, using the phone, getting in on door knocks, running appointments? Kind of just take us through, over the last couple of weeks, what your best week has been.
Sure. Well, I'll start by saying I had to look at my weakest component. And honestly, my weakest component is switching from, sweatpants to real clothes and getting out the door in a timely manner.
Right.
So I had, for the last couple of weeks, I, had my lunch prepared in the refrigerator, all my materials in the car, and had a set time that I'd be out the door. I may not know exactly where I'm going, but I know that I've got to get out the door to see the people. And so once I'm in my car, then, kind of on gut instinct, a lot of times, I'll make phone calls from my car. I do our video conferences from my car on my way back from Detroit. I watched several of the training videos.
Right.
Why not? 4 hours. So I keep my door knock script on a little note card in the door of my car, and I practice that. I tape record myself. I'm going to be closer to seeing the people when I'm dressed in real clothes and out there in my car going somewhere
Right.
than I am staying in my mothership, as I call it.
Right.
I can certainly make the phone calls. But once I've received my leads, I've I've attempted to call people, I've set up the appointments that I could, then there's a certain population, they're just not going to answer their phone.
Right.
So I'm basically wasting my time staying home and calling those people. I'm just better off getting in my car and going to their door. So that's been my routine.
So when you're at the door, can you walk us through your script? Like, what do you say to get in the door?
Well, I go through the David Duford script. Good morning. My name is Jane Coppenall, and I'm here. And now I'm messing up. I don't have my script right.
Of course. Put you on the spot. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
right.
But I do my door knock script,
Right.
have a little conversation. Initially, a couple of weeks ago, I was all over the place. I was willy-nilly. I was going to, wasn't that I hadn't bought into the value of the script. It was that I was overwhelmed
Right.
by the gravity of material to learn.
Right. Yeah.
And watching working with Joe B on one of his Thursday night calls. I'd been out on 2 door knocks that evening, and turned on my computer and flipped in on that because it was just like, this is pointless. I'm going to lose people by going to the door all willy-nilly.
Right.
I've got to get my act together. I have to figure out what I'm doing and have some consistency. So Joe's first question was, well, do you know the script? I'm like, Joe, I'm all over the place. He's like, learn the script. And that was key. It turned everything around. And it gives a certain level of comfort too, because it takes the pressure off of, what do I say? Well,
Right.
Learn the script and you know what to say.
Right. Right. And that's so important, right? It's simple yet it's so confoundingly difficult, right? I mean, that's, what I preach. It's that, there's a reason there's a playbook. There's a reason there's a process, because it's very easy to overwhelm yourself and to get off the track that you need to run on.
Right.
And Joe's perfect example. For those of you who are curious, Joe has a call that he hosts. He's been an agent, longtime agent for me, but for our agents, he does a dial day where he dials for the first hour. You can listen in and kind of hear what he does. And then the second hour, if you'd like, he can listen to your calling on Zoom, of course, and then provide some feedback and critique. It's really good. People love it. But Joe was in that same position too. It's just like everybody, we fight against the disciplined and the things that we know we need to do. Right.
Yeah.
And many times it just takes, so now as a teacher, all lessons can't be taught. Sometimes you got to learn it firsthand. Right. So
exactly.
So good. Walk us through kind of your best week in the field so far. I know you've written, I think it was last week, or the week before, you like 3 or 4 or 5,000 in premium. It was pretty good considering, all considered. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I've made, I've had some pretty good weeks, but then I've followed up and made some mistakes, and lost a couple deals because of it. One of my clients, one of my past clients, she wrote, and then she wanted her husband, and her daughter had a restaurant there locally and owned the restaurant. And she really wanted me to meet the daughter. She wanted me to eat at the restaurant. She was kind of hoping her daughter would pick up the premium because their income was limited.
Sure.
So I fell for it.
Uh-oh.
And I went to the restaurant. you know, I showed the daughter what her mother had written, showed her opportunities on how she could increase this policy. The entire time her daughter was staring at me, you know, ice cold, like I was dirt. And next day, they canceled. They had a little family meeting, the children with the parents, and the children said, you know, you don't need this, we'll cover it. And that was the end of the story.
Right.
So don't go to the children.
Yeah, what's the lesson learned there?
Don't go to the children. Stay away.
You know, it's funny too, like you think it would help, but in most cases it doesn't. And why is that the case? Because, you know, my take on this, and who knows what exactly the daughter said to the parents, but ultimately, even if she could take care of this at this present time, there's no promise for that for tomorrow, right? Restaurants, guess what? Fail. You know, hard times fall on people who are doing well, right? We can't predict the future with perfection. And that's why insurance exists. And frankly, kids don't really get that, you know, especially if they're younger and, you know, don't understand the same circumstances. So that's why I always tell agents and that kind of rebuttal strategy, you know, of course you don't want to engage with the kids. They will provide an opinion that is lacking perspective ultimately. And it's really the adults in the room that have to be the adults, right? You know, you need this, you know, this is important. There's no reason to talk to kids because they're going to want this. So lesson learned, right? So.
Right. Lesson learned.
Right. Jane, as we wrap this up, last question for you. What would be some pieces of advice you would give agents who are getting started or agents who are struggling?
Well, number one, I would say, as you've said before, limit your number of carriers. Yeah. I sort of made that mistake because as I ran quotes, I saw these other companies that were more economically feasible, and I'd get excited and I'd want to contract with those companies. So limit the number of carriers. You don't have to know everything about the company, just know the basics. And as you've said 100 times, you know, this has been huge to me. Stick to the fundamentals.
Yeah.
You know, stick to the basics. Learn the script. And even before I came into your company, you know, I watched several of your videos, and it was see the people, see the people, see the people. And so, you know, when I'm out there on the road, that's what I tell myself, see the people, see the people. And also, I would say, do your due diligence. When I first started out in this business, which I just got my license first part of June 2022, and I was with another company, and I watched your videos and learned, you know, I'm kind of, this is not the best company for me to be with.
Sure.
So I made the transition, and it took some time transitioning carriers also. But do your due diligence, ask questions, meet with you, you know. I mean, I'm so happy that I've found you, and you're sincere, you're honest, and your conviction of this business and helping new agents in the field is authentic. And I greatly appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. All of which is very important, regardless if an agent joins my agency or not. Of course, I'd like you to check it out, DeFord Insurance Group, daviddeford.com/FAQ, shameless plug. You do need to ask questions. You do need to make sure before you jump into this business that you are at the right agency that meets your criteria of what you need out of it. This business is populated by a big MLM type of culture. A lot of people don't think of it being that way. It's insurance. How could there ever be an MLM involvement in it? Well, there is. About 3/4 of the agencies out there meet that criteria. So slow down, do due diligence, and just like Jane said, follow the fundamentals. That is critical to your success in the short and the long term. Jane, thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.